RPN is not responsible for the views, actions, statements, or opinions of its guests, advertisers, or even its viewers. The information contained in this program is not to be confused with medical or legal advice. An appearance on this platform is not necessarily an endorsement, but as always, we encourage you to do your own research. Enjoy the show. Good evening, everyone. And of course, welcome back. That's right, my friends. It's time for another Monday edition of Red Pill News Live. Hope you guys are having a lovely day. Thank you very much for joining us. Oh, do we have so much to talk about? Whether it's the recent revelations in the Brian Kohberger case, President Trump's performance this weekend at the second attempt of the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the Senate's efforts to cancel recess and finally get the Save America Act passed, or maybe even a little bit of news about Joe Biden and immigration. My friends, don't go anywhere. Now, if you haven't yet, do me a favor, please hit that like button or the thumbs up or the heart, whatever it might be. I really appreciate it. Also, Principal Enigma, it's probably your bank that is blocking the charges. It's a problem that a lot of people have. If you want, you can go to co-fi.com/redpill78 and you can send donations there. It will show up with a notification on my screen. You can even write a message just like you do over on the rants, and I will still read them off while we're live on the air. All right, so if you haven't yet, please sit back, relax, and grab your popcorn, because we are going to get into it right about now. All right, my friends, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And let me just make sure we should be working on all of the platforms. It looks like it. Phil Scarborough, good to see you out there. BB over there in New Zealand, good to see you as well. Lots of familiar names and faces out there in the chat. Always appreciate you guys hanging out with us Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern. As you know, we do each and every day. Before we get into it, I do have to give a big shout out to the first sponsor of the program. And that will be our friends right here at the Trump Mystery Box. You guys, you may have been, for a long time, a full-blown collector of MAGA memorabilia, just a lover of President Trump, or maybe you're just somebody who likes to prank your uncle at Thanksgiving. So stick with me on this one because I really think you're going to like it. It is called the Trump Patriot Mystery Box. It's worth up to $90 in retail value. Nobody never knows exactly what's inside. You could get all kinds of things. Commemorative pieces, patriotic accessories, random Trump-flavored surprises. Basically, it's a grab bag of American pride. So if you're serious about your collection, it's an instant upgrade to your stash with zero effort required. But even if you're not that serious, honestly, imagine handing this to somebody and watching their face melt when they open it, seeing President Trump's face and MAGA memorabilia emblazoned all over everything. That alone might be worth it. But the best part is the box itself is free. All you do is cover shipping and handling. There are thousands of these already out there in the wild, so people are very clearly enjoying it. However, the supply is limited, so you don't want to be the one person who waited too long and missed it. So hit me up here. This only takes about 2 minutes. Cover shipping. It shows up at your door. The link is down below this video. You can go grab one before they're gone. Items may vary in each box, but check it out because you're truly going to love it. So you can visit freepatriotmysterybox.com/redpill. Once again, that is freepatriotmysterybox.com/redpill. Actually, they are telling me freepatriotbox.com/redpill. They're also saying freepatriotmysterybox.com/redpill. So let me just click on the link real quick here. I want to make sure that actually works. Yes, free patriotbox.com/redpill. That is going to be the one that you want to go. Or you can go to the QR code that you see on screen right there over on Rumble, or the link that is in the Rumble chat or down below the video. Thank you very much to them for supporting the show, and thank you to you for being here. All right, let us begin. First of all, we have a new proof of life from Senator Mitch McConnell. So you guys tell me, does this look like the real Mitch McConnell and his wife Elaine Chao in the rehab center right across the street from George Washington Hospital? I don't know, but this came out earlier today in an email. U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell in the office of the attending physician released the following today. He said, I'm still working hard to get back to my full schedule of work in the Senate and in Kentucky, keeping up with intense physical therapy per my doctor's orders. Unfortunately, that means I won't be able to make it to Fancy Farm, Kentucky this Saturday. There's no place I'd rather be on the first Saturday in August than with the good people of Western Kentucky feasting on pork and mutton. It sounds like a great time, I'm not going to lie. When I first attended 42 years ago, Fancy Farm was a pretty lonely place to be a Republican. But my, how times have changed. Today, Western Kentucky is a conservative Republican sea of red. So I hate that I'll miss the fun this year, but I'm sending my best wishes to the St. Jerome community for a successful picnic. As always, I appreciate all of your continued well wishes, and I'm looking forward to getting back to the Senate and to Kentucky soon. Hopefully that was not too offensive, a Mitch McConnell impression. I feel like it was pretty much spot on. The only thing that I'm missing is perhaps stopping mid-sentence and then staring out into the void for an extended period before an aide comes up and taps me on the shoulder and tells me to continue reading. Now, whether or not Mitch McConnell is actually alive, I still don't believe he wrote this. I think that obviously one of the people on his staff wrote it. If Mitch McConnell is still kicking it there in the rehab center, the man is just not the same. I saw a clip the other day from maybe 40 years ago. Mitch McConnell standing there on the floor of the Senate. He had a commanding presence. I mean, that guy used to be together. But in the last several years, the Mitch McConnell, even if you never really cared for Mitch McConnell, you have to admit the guy has fallen off. And that is truly, truly sad. I feel like they are trotting out a corpse every time they do something like this. Give us a glitch look. Say, buttered sausages, pudding, buttered sausages. Pork and mutton. Okay, there you go. Okay. So yeah, I don't believe this. I don't believe it at all. He used to be a contender. used to be. I mean, he also used to be a cocaine trafficker, allegedly, in his family. Either way, you know, I don't buy it. And until I see Mitch McConnell live and in person, I don't even know that I'm going to buy it then. I'll be really honest with you. All right, let's talk about probably what is the biggest news of the day. If you are a true crime aficionado, as my wife is, Bryan Kohberger is seeking to withdraw his guilty plea in the death of the Idaho 4. This was announced initially by the New York Times. I had to scour for a source which was not the New York Times because, of course, I hate them. Now, Bryan Kohberger gave an interview to the New York Times last night before actually filing the paperwork. I don't know if it's a plea or something like that. Anyways, it was a filing to essentially reopen his case and to withdraw his guilty plea. Now, if you all remember, or maybe you followed along, I talked about it sparingly here on the channel because I generally don't do the true crime stuff. There's a lot of other people who do it a lot better. I'm more interested in politics and, global affairs. But anyways, Bryan Kohberger was accused of killing 4 University of Idaho students. And he did eventually plead guilty right before the trial was about to kick off. Everybody who was watching felt like they were robbed. Of course, there's a lot of people out there who believe Bryan Kohberger is innocent incident. A lot of people who believe he's innocent. Personally, I think that the chances of him being innocent are pretty likely. And I think that anybody who tells you without a doubt that Bryan Kohberger is guilty without having actually seen the evidence be presented in a fair and concise manner, I think people are just deciding based upon their emotional connection to this case. So he released, first of all, a statement to the New York Times through his family. And basically he said that justice was not served, and he made it sort of out to be as if he was misled when making that plea. And he has called the authorities' view of the case myopic and a work of fiction. Quoting from Bryan Kohberger's statement, that he said he circumnavigated by a broken plea. The trial never provided the public the clarity conducive to closure, and justice shall remain abjectly miscarried unless that plea is withdrawn. So the filing in the Idaho court system that was filed by Kohberger indicates that he is seeking post-conviction relief. If you do know, then under Idaho law, the courts may set aside a conviction and allow a plea to be withdrawn to correct manifest injustice. In his statement, he also said that his plea was made as a result of false promises and blatant disinformation. Now, he was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without parole, also without the death penalty, in the stabbing deaths of students Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. There were also 2 other students who were in the house at the time, but they were unharmed. The Idaho Attorney General also put out a statement. This is obviously not the outcome that I think they wanted. He said, my heart goes out to the families of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan, who have already endured unimaginable loss and now must face today's deeply painful news. My office stands ready to do whatever is necessary to ensure justice is fully carried out. Now, what I also understand is that Bryan Kohberger has welcomed the state to reapply for the death penalty. He is saying, I am innocent, and if you want to put me to death because you can prove that I am guilty, then we'll go ahead and play that game. Now, here is Bryan Kohberger's affidavit. This is an affidavit of facts in support of his post-conviction petition. So Bryan is actually going to be representing himself pro se in this action. And it looks like, again, Ann Taylor, the woman who was his defense attorney, is going to have a couple of things to likely answer for. She will probably be deposed as a result of this action. Now, he writes, it is hereby declared that during attorney-client discussions, most of which included all members of Bryan Kohberger's family and immediate family, petitioner was convinced to falsely confess to capital murder and felony burglary by coercion, disinformation, false promises, and the withholding of exculpatory discovery. The following is material to the inception of the plea. So what is the evidence that Bryan Kohberger has to show that he is due this post-conviction relief? Number 1, counsel's failure, so Ann Taylor's failure to inform petitioner of exculpatory discovery received during plea discussions, namely clumps of unknown hair found in Ethan Chapin's hands, as well as a failure of further inquiry. Now, I would ask anyone out there in the chat, if you believe Bryan Kohberger was the sole murderer of these 4 Idaho college students, then how do you explain clumps of hair in the hands of the deceased that do not belong to Bryan Kohberger or any of the other decedents? Man, that's a tough one. And certainly to me, that alone gives Bryan the reasoning that he needs to receive this post-conviction relief. Number 2, petitioner was convinced that actual guilt was not an important factor in considering plea acceptance, which means likely it sounds like Ann Taylor told him that, hey, despite the fact that you're going to attest to the fact that you actually murdered these people, you're going to want to go ahead and do it just so that we can get this over with. The fact that you're not really guilty, well, that's immaterial here. So again, death row was imminent at the time that Bryan took that plea, which essentially spared him from being put to death. And he was advised by his attorney to lie. The petitioner, Bryan, was to gain a legal victory in entering a false plea. But clearly, I mean, it's not quite so much of a victory. I don't know that I would want to be alive in prison for the rest of my life dealing with all of the BS that comes along with that. Now, even if I was, innocent, a gross misrepresentation of and promises regarding what a life sentence would immediately afford the petitioner, and a gross misrepresentation of death row in Idaho, including an elaborate, fabricated story of counsel's horrific experience touring an actual 6x8 death row cell, all communicated to petitioner and his family by IDOC through counsel, thus constituting threats and promises made to induce a plea agreement. Further, your affiant saith not. Signature of affiant, Bryan Kohberger. So I'm very, very interested. And now that this is happening, we are probably going to be following this case pretty closely, and I will be reporting on it as much as I can. So, I would suggest that anybody out there who already has their mind made up about Bryan Kohberger, let's hold off on the judgment and let's go ahead and watch this case play out, because certainly this would not be the first time that the legal system failed somebody who was accused of doing something heinous, who was entirely innocent of what they were being accused. People have gone to prison because of overzealous prosecutors, because of police who fail to do adequate investigations, because they get their eyes set on a suspect and they believe, hey, this is the only way to go. We're not even going to bother looking at anybody else. There is, in my opinion, a lot of evidence to suggest that Bryan Kohberger, at a minimum, was not alone in what he did, but I think more than likely he was not even present at the time that this stuff happened. It doesn't mean he isn't weird. Doesn't mean that he isn't somewhat of a creep. I don't know. We'll have to find all of that stuff out. But it doesn't seem to me that he is the guilty one, and I think that he was set up, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, now, President Trump had an incredible showing this weekend at the second White House Correspondents' Dinner, where members of the American media who have spent years calling him an authoritarian, suggesting that he's a fascist, and repeatedly comparing him to Adolf Hitler and the worst people in humanity, they were the butt of all of President Trump's jokes. It was basically like a 90-minute stand-up set where President Trump roasted the mainstream media. And so now they've got their feelings hurt. Somebody kicked them in their privates, and now they're worried about the White House Correspondents' Dinner becoming too mean, even though in the past they have said the nastiest things about President Trump. They all take themselves way too seriously. So like I said, President Trump aimed squarely at the mainstream media, and the clips that came out of this thing were absolutely incredible. My favorite one was about Barry Weiss and CBS News, and I neglected to pull that one up. President Trump, White House Correspondents' Dinner, Barry Weiss. This is the best one. Okay.
All of the press here in one place. I have to say that we're having an amazing load of accomplishments that the media never talks about. For example, under my administration, a once feared and powerful regime that relentlessly attacked America has finally been toppled. Their former leaders have been removed, and they're now being run by a gay dictator facing internal divisions. But I, for one, wish Barry Weiss all the best at CBS News. She's a wonderful woman.
And if you're wondering, yes, Barry Weiss is gay. She is the new head of CBS News. I don't know about the insurgency that she's facing, though. But yeah, that's absolutely hilarious. All right. Now, over the weekend, President Trump also went on a real tear on Truth Social, posting a whole bunch of things. But I wanted to highlight this one because he posted a picture of himself and President John F. Kennedy, both of them standing in front of the White House. It's not a picture. It's an AI-generated image that was animated by Grok. I would say that without a doubt, President Trump and John F. Kennedy were the two greatest foes of the deep state. And it has been iterated to me that the work that President Trump is doing, and I think probably a lot of people already feel this way without having anybody behind the scenes tell them that President Trump's work as president is quite literally to unravel that deep state establishment that not only killed John F. Kennedy, but that killed his son, that killed JFK Jr. It was JFK Jr.'s legacy to grow up, to enter politics, and to become president of the United States. And he was going to do the job that President Trump is doing. And it would have been done decades ago. But of course, they killed JFK Jr., and the baton was essentially handed to President Trump. Now, I have thought that for a long time, and not just the CIA nor LADV, but the CIA is obviously a huge part of it. There are other foreign intelligence agencies that were involved in the murder of John F. Kennedy as well. There were so many people who were involved in the murder of John F. Kennedy, but certainly the American intelligence community was directly responsible for it. CIA 100%, which is why it's so important that, of course, Bill Pulte is doing the work that he's doing right now. So I think that this was a prelude to what Bill Pulte essentially got up to over the weekend. All right. Now, last week, we announced that Jim Jordan had criminally referred fake former special counsel Jack Smith to the Department of Justice for prosecution in that letter to acting Attorney General Todd Blanche. I believe Todd Blanche is set to have his vote for confirmation in the first week of August, I believe August 6th. So that is pretty much the date that I'm looking for really the ish to hit the fan. But Chairman Jordan said that Jack Smith's testimony included intentionally false statements that were designed to obstruct the committee's oversight. All individuals have an obligation to comply with a duly authorized congressional inquiry. Mr. Smith, a former public servant, is no different. Yet, his testimony included intentionally false statements that were designed to obstruct the committee's oversight. His conduct can only be understood as an effort to thwart the committee's inquiry by intentionally making false statements and representations before Congress. Now, of course, Jack Smith lied, in my opinion, to the House Judiciary Committee last December when there was the revelation that there were members of Congress that had their toll records. Basically, Jack Smith made it out to sound as if just, the people they called, that was the only thing I got. But it turns out that they actually got a hold of like text messages and the content of messages as well. So Jack Smith actually made a statement about this on Friday. Wasn't him so much as it was his lawyers, but the statement goes, Mr. Smith agreed to testify before the House Judiciary Committee fully cognizant of the risk that President Trump's Justice Department would try to find something in his testimony to serve as the basis for a criminal charge. This risk existed not because Mr. Smith would make a false statement, but because President Trump has repeatedly ordered Mr. Smith be prosecuted and jailed. That is not the rule of law, and it contravenes the principles that are critical to the vitality of our democracy. Jack, we do not live in a democracy. It is a republic. Now, his attorneys also argued that the former special counsel was merely referring to the toll record subpoenas during that line of questioning. He didn't specifically mention text messages, so there is a possibility he might get off on this. Now, during his testimony, Mr. Smith provided truthful, responsive answers and candidly discussed his work as special counsel. This referral reflects a chilling eagerness to weaponize the justice system by attacking a career, nonpartisan public servant who faithfully and fearlessly performed his duties by following the facts and the law. We know that's not true. The toll record subpoenas that were the focus of those questions did not call for the content of text messages. The questions and answers preceding and following these exchanges also make clear that the focus of the questions was on the toll record subpoenas. Notably, the referral letter does not contest the truthfulness of Mr. Smith's answers. Well, it does in a manner of speaking, because he directly said that Jack Smith intentionally made false statements. Now, here's the thing. Jack Smith is a lawyer, right? So lawyers know how to lie, especially under oath. They know how to answer in such a way that they can manipulate something like this, an inquiry at some point in the future. Now, if you're under oath and the lawyer questions you and says, Mr. Smith, what color car do you drive? And you drive a black car and you say blue. Well, that one's a pretty blatant lie. You're obviously going to get caught for that. Would you be charged with perjury for that? Probably not, but you might, get some sanctions. But technically it is perjury because it's the incorrect answer. But the answers that Jack Smith gave were very, very specific, and he never strayed outside of the specific context of those records that were known about at the time. Of course, Jack Smith knew at the time that there were also text messages and that the dragnet was far larger than was initially admitted. But of course, he didn't step his toes into that water. Did he have a responsibility to? I think so. But of course, lawyers are going to lawyer. All right. Now, over the weekend, also in Seattle, there was a gang-related shooting at a Seattle food festival. Here, we can actually see a vendor was live streaming, and in the background, you can kind of hear that something is going on. There were deaths. This is tragic. But, of course, this is what happens when you don't have police in your city.
Video and $200K. I'll get that plaque that says $100K. Shooting? Oh, shit.
He's like, should I get out in front of the camera? Should I stay here standing up and just get shot?
Oh shit, right here. Get down. Yeah, just get down.
Oh. So look at this. I mean, you've got people just running everywhere. Absolutely horrific. People getting trampled, people getting shoved.
Oh, it's right there. Oh shit.
And this rubbernecking moron just continues standing up. Hey, what can I see?
No. Get the register, come. Yeah, get the register and the tips. And the tips.
Okay, so somebody is shot right there in the background. All right, that's why somebody's on the ground.
Call the other side. Hey, call Chimo. Yeah, come from the...
And you got somebody in a wheelchair there, it looks like. Anyways, when this first happened, they were very, very careful about announcing who the shooter was. Yeah, survival instincts are low in a city like Seattle where everybody's on dope. And also, of course, they're just morons. But I'm sorry if we have any viewers in Seattle, but I doubt it. Might be a couple, but, you're probably outside the city. Anyways, 3 people were killed, 4 people were injured, and that includes a small child. This was a gang-related shooting, so as such, you can see it looks like it's a young, I think, African-American or perhaps American Samoan individual. I can't exactly tell. I can't even tell you if it's a man or a woman. If it's a man, he's got some man boobs. If it's a woman, he's not wearing a bra. But either way, 3 people were killed, and those 4 others, which include the child, were injured fairly badly. Several of the people who were injured are not expected to make it. So this is probably going to be a death toll that continues to rise. But it was called the Bite of Seattle. This is a annual food festival. They celebrate 40 years of community, culture, and cuisine. The event, hosted at the Seattle Center, features over 300 vendors, beer and wine gardens, cider tastings, local artisans, over 65 musical performers, and, of course, needle drop-off centers and safer sex kits. 4 people wounded. 1 person was arrested. A 2-year-old boy remains hospitalized. Very, very tragic. Very, very sad. Again, this appears to be gang-related. Here is the video of the assailant being taken away. Oh, no. This appears to be a grok animation. I see it actually in action. How do I know that, you may ask? Well, there is a ambient noise that you will hear in AI generated videos. And so I definitely hear that. And then also the original picture, it's directly taken from that original picture. The video is much, much clearer than the original picture. And the police, everybody has a lack of urgency, kind of just casually strolling along. This might be a real video. Nope, this is another AI video, I can tell. You can, yeah, made with AI. Yeah, okay. Okay, so here is a description of the assailant. Witnesses describe pure panic as the crowds fled. It was just pure chaos, said attendee Eston Wakanabo, 25. People were hiding. They were pushing. People were falling to the ground. Baby strollers were falling. You guys ever seen that episode of Seinfeld where George is at the birthday party for the kids and the fire alarm goes off and he like shoves all the kids and a grandmother and the clown out of his way so that he can run out of the apartment screaming? I tend to think it was a lot like that. Okay, so police say 2 individuals appear to have been shooting at each other. One suspect, described only as a young person, is in custody. That was the person of color that we saw there. The second suspect remains at large, probably a contemporary of the first young person. Seattle Police Assistant Chief Tyrone Davis told reporters detectives currently have no description of the young person still being sought. And officials say that there is no ongoing threat to the public. Video shows officers leading one person away with their hands behind their back. And of course, that is AI. Washington State has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, but say it with me now, criminals don't care about gun laws, especially gangbangers. Yeah, they really don't care. And apparently security was really lax this year. Here's a guy who was at the event the day before, and he was basically making a video complaining about the fact that there's 0 police presence. But of course, why would you want police there to make lefties feel threatened?
With no security, no pat down, no search of the bag. Surprised there's not any security walking around. It's Light of Seattle got the budget. Y'all got the sponsors. You got the support.
Okay, I'm about to dip, but tap in with him.
Make it happen. Keep the people safe. Seattle, you should not be able to just walk up into this festival with all these people, with all these vendors, with no security. We in here with the bag. Feel me? With the bag. If nobody else is going to talk about it, I'm going to talk about it. We officially found the security out eating food in a fenced area.
So anyways, I bet you this guy got a lot of followers as a result of this. All right. Now, here is the communist mayor of Seattle. Let's see if she identifies the assailant. Methinks she won't.
Come a little closer, sir, please.
All dressed up like Mao Zedong. Look at her.
A little closer because we've got this police line we cannot cross.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your patience as we've been working to make sure that we can provide accurate information. I'm sorry that we're having to gather here tonight under these tragic circumstances. What happened here today at the Seattle Center was an unbelievable tragedy, and a horrific act of violence.
A horrific act of violence where a gun killed 3 people and a 4th and then shot several other people. And certainly it wasn't the person holding the gun.
My heart right now is with the victims and their families and with everyone in our community who is reeling from what happened here today.
Okay, this goes on for 20 minutes and she never actually identifies anybody. So I'll go ahead and we'll skip it for you so you don't have to deal with it. Okay, look at this. This is Seattle cops delaying the press conference for dignitaries. What kind of a dignitary was visiting during this time?
We are almost 5 hours into this. And I'm not mad at you. I am mad at the dignitaries that are holding up a press conference for the public to get information about a mass shooting outside of the Space Center.
So if I'm not mistaken, this was at like almost midnight, like 11:30 last night. They hadn't given anybody any information because, of course, you know, there's the optics of a person of color getting into a gunfight in the middle of a crowded event in Seattle.
It is outrageous that we're being told to wait for dignitaries.
So what I'll do is I'll go back here and we'll get everybody down here. We'll get somebody to talk to you guys. I mean, I do understand, like I said, I do understand you guys have been out for a while, I've been out here for a long time.
It's not us, it's the public that needs to know.
Okay? All right.
Do we have a timeline on when these supposed dignitaries are supposed to be here?
Let's just, you know.
Dignitaries? Who are they talking about? Is the mayor talking about herself? I mean, who is a dignitary in Seattle? I mean, what did they have, like an ambassador for another country that happened to be on site? I don't know. But this will undoubtedly end up leading to nothing. More bad stuff will continue happening in Seattle. Now, this is actually another mass shooting, but this is a good outcome. So this one is in Tucson, Arizona. I'm going to show you what cops do when cops do. Okay, so this guy walking down the street turns around and he starts shooting at people behind him. Don't know who he was attempting to hit, but he starts running away. Now you'll see these loafers on the curb here. Again, people with zero survival instinct. All right, one of them has a little more survival instinct than the other one, but just take a look. Okay, so you got this guy coming in right here. He turns around, he boom, 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 mag dump right there. The girl runs. The guy's like, I can't even get up. And then the guy goes around to the side of the car where the girl is hiding, and boom, the cops get him. Got him before he even got half a block away. Okay, that's police work right there, guys. That's how you do it. Right, quick, call the social worker. That's what they would have done in Seattle. Now, they got to run. I don't know if they got to run down the street and help some people out. Maybe MRMyqJPi7ar6z76dkKhbuRvZ6i3XDD2cg9 is one of the dignitaries. Maybe. I feel like that's a stretch, though. Calling MRMyqJPi7ar6z76dkKhbuRvZ6i3XDD2cg9 a dignitary is definitely a stretch. All right, so good work on that one, boys in blue. Gotta love to see it. All right, so there is a bit of a movement happening in the Senate. Over the weekend, I saw that Scott Presler had requested that a member of the Senate go to John Thune and request that the Senate not take August recess. As far as I'm concerned, they've had enough time off this year. They've had more time off this year than I've had in the last 10 years. All right. And so based Mike Lee signed up pretty quick. He was tagged by somebody in Scott's tweet. He responded to it. He said, yes, I'll do it. He retweeted it. And so he became the first. And then shortly after that, we had a couple of others, including Senator Jim Banks and let me see who else. We got a full list of people here. Oh, yeah. Darlene Graham also signed on. We got Rick Scott on there. We got Tommy Tuberville. We got Ashley Moody. So, yeah, we got two of my peeps from down here in Florida, Lee, Scott, Tuberville, Banks, Moody, and Graham. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 senators who are now officially requesting that the Senate refrain from their recess. Now, President Trump posted this right around the same time that this all started to kind of develop. He said, John Thune should not allow the United States Senate to leave town until it passes the Save America Act. Far better still, terminates the filibuster, extra S on there, where Republicans can then quickly pass everything they ever dreamed of, including a full and deep-throated Save America Act, the budget, and the ever-looming debt ceiling disaster. 1929. That's invoking a dire economic picture right there. The Democrats will do it on day one. And it can't be, and I can't believe how lucky they got with this Senate leadership. Remember, stupidity always brings losing and death. President Donald J. Trump. So Darlene Graham retweets it and says, President Trump is 100% correct. The Save America Act is a top priority. I will stay here as long as necessary to get it passed and signed into law. I came to Washington to fight for the people of South Carolina and deliver on our conservative agenda. Hey, Darlene Graham might end up not being her brother's sister. She might end up being a much, much better outcome for us. So, Rick Scott had already said previously that he was in favor of not going on recess. I don't know. I thought it was a little weird that it took somebody on social media to say, hey, guys, why don't you do this? Well, and then they said, oh, what a great idea. I'll go ahead and do it. It's like nobody had the balls to do it before Scott Presler said on Twitter, go ahead and do it. Maybe that was planned. I don't know, man. These people, I think that they are all in contact with each other. But so, yes, Rick Scott came in pretty quickly thereafter. Jim Banks came in pretty quickly thereafter. I think Ashley Moody came in right after that. Everybody appears to be getting in line. Now, this is distressing to the leadership in the Senate. Apparently, Senate GOP leaders have produced a talking points memo, which they are passing around and hoping to quash this internal revolt over the Save America Act. The document outlines potential questions from the media, and it offers guidance for members' responses on several topics, including the GOP's marquee election integrity legislation, the Save America Act. The document created by the Senate Republican Conference is titled Conference Prep. Now, I don't know if that means that this is a document that they are in favor of the Save America Act or they're against the Save America Act. But here is the thing. So this document outlines these potential questions, and the prep document includes a hypothetical question a member could face. President Trump is calling for Leader Thune to keep the Senate in session in August to pass the Save America Act. Do you agree? Now, listen to this doublespeak. I want to pass the Save America Act just as much as the president, but we don't have the votes to pass the Save America Act or eliminate the filibuster. If staying in session will somehow change that outcome, then I'm all for it. It continues, but I don't think staying in session will make more votes appear. We are not going to get a single Democrat to vote for the Save America Act, no matter how long we are in session. And we have work to do at home to make sure we beat the Democrats in November. One Republican staffer familiar with the document says it sends the message that Senate Republicans support the legislation, but with a caveat. The message seems to be that the Republicans support the Save America Act, but are willing to change absolutely nothing, sacrifice no vacations, and threaten no committee seats to move it forward. A strategy that relies on Democrats suddenly doing the right thing is not a strategy. Now, the Daily Caller reached out to Senate Republican Conference Chairman Tom Cotton of Arkansas, to confirm the document's authenticity, but they did not get a response in time for the publication. The document also addresses the recent public tension between White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt and John Thune following her remarks last Thursday that President Trump's patience was running out with the Senate leader over his handling of the president's legislative priorities. So Leavitt told the Daily Caller correspondent Reagan Reese that Trump wanted to see as much of the Save America Act passed as possible by the August recess. Now, the document instructs conference members to push back on the idea of a rift between Trump and Thune, emphasizing that the two Republican leaders are united and working together to advance the president's agenda. President Trump and Senator Thune are united and doing an excellent job delivering safety and prosperity for Americans, despite unprecedented Democrat obstruction, the document says. The talking points highlight Trump and Thune's cooperation on issues including affordability, border security, and national security. They point to efforts such as ending tax on tips, eliminating income taxes on Social Security benefits, strengthening the military, securing the border, deporting violent criminals through measures such as the Laken Riley Act, and cracking down on fentanyl trafficking. The document also addresses calls from some conservatives to eliminate the Senate filibuster to advance legislation, arguing that Republicans must remain focused on defeating the radical Democrat socialists rather than changing Senate rules. The memo instructs senators to argue that eliminating the filibuster would be a long-term mistake that could allow future Democratic majorities to expand federal power, add new states, pack the Supreme Court, and pass their broader agenda. No worries that they're going to do all of that anyways as soon as they get back in power. Asked whether Democrats would eliminate the filibuster anyway, the talking points say Republicans should not give them the opportunity or political cover to do so. Conference leaders instead advised Republican senators to argue that if Democrats choose to eliminate the filibuster, they should own the consequences with voters. Okay, well, they would basically own the entire country at that point. I am trying, Shibarista, to read it as if it's a robot that is answering it, because these are answers that are so canned that are basically, it probably was written by an AI. Write me out a series of responses to possible questions from the press about these issues and make it appear as if I want to do the right thing. But of course, we just don't have the votes. The messaging suggests the party should continue working together to advance Trump's agenda despite disagreements over legislative strategy. On Monday, President Trump once again called for John Thune to advance the GOP election integrity legislation in a Truth Social post. And that's what we read earlier. Oh, gosh. Yes. AI copies me. That's right. That's right. Yeah, I do like reading like a robot. Hang on just a second. Let me do that again. I want to pass the Save America Act just as much as the president, but we don't have the votes to pass the Save America Act or eliminate the filibuster. If staying in session will somehow change that outcome, then I'm all for it. You can just imagine them like standing there like, Leader Thune says, I want to pass the Save America Act. But of course, I'm not willing to do anything to make that happen. These people are robots. That's right. All right. Well, let's talk about New Jersey, because things are certainly heating up in New Jersey. You remember last week we learned about 6,600 non-citizens were added to the voter rolls. That was for 1 year. That was the only year they looked at. Undoubtedly, it's far more than 6,600. 400 or so of them were shown to have voted in that 1 year in a federal election. But every single year in the state of New Jersey, about 75,000 non-citizens are summoned for jury duty. And that is based on data from 3 state government agencies. That includes the Motor Vehicle Commission, which is like the DMV. And that, of course, is a stunning figure. It certainly widens the scope of the possible number of illegal aliens or non-citizens that are on the voter rolls in the state of New Jersey. How do I know that? Well, because where do you think they get the list of possible jury selection candidates? They go to the voter rolls. So if there are 75,000 non-citizens that get summoned for jury duty every single year, then undoubtedly there's not just 75,000 of them on the voter rolls or living in the state of New Jersey. That's the average. Every single year, they're getting 75,000 of them because they're going to be sending out roughly the same amount of jury selection requests every single year. They have a schedule for trials, and people are always committing crimes. They always need new jurors. So those juries are getting cycled through, you know? I mean, like the same person who is on one jury pool or is selected for a jury pool 1 year is not likely to get chosen again in the same year. They're not even likely to get chosen again the next year. Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on how much crime is happening in New Jersey. I don't have all of the statistics, but although that number may be alarming, of course, we don't know for certain whether or not any of those non-citizens have served on a jury because, well, of course, you're not supposed to serve on a jury if you are a non-citizen. Prospective jurors are asked about their citizenship and other qualifications when they complete the mandatory juror qualification questionnaire. That is Pete McAleer. He's a spokesperson for the New Jersey Administrative Office of the Courts. But let me also just tell you this. That questionnaire is on the honor system in the exact same way that the questionnaire is the honor system when you sign up to get yourself a driver's license. They're going to ask you, are you a citizen? Are you not a citizen? As we've seen, non-citizens have previously checked the box that, yes, they are a citizen. So in between, potential jurors watch a training video that includes that citizenship requirement. And those who advance are reminded of their eligibility requirements during their orientation, and they are directly questioned about their citizenship during jury selection by the judge and as permitted by the attorneys. Just because they're asked and just because they're reminded doesn't mean they don't lie, because people are generally dishonest. That's what I found when just reviewing the world. So the revelation that these non-citizens are making their way into jury pools is suspicious and interesting timing, because we just got that announcement from Governor Mickey Sherrill. Might or might not have something to do with it. Now, according to McAleer, the judiciary processes more than 1 million summonses annually for potential jury service and randomly selects records provided by the Division of Electronics, the Division of Taxation, and the Motor Vehicle Division. So all of those various agencies may or may not have non-citizens in their databases. But the disclosure from Governor Sherrill that the Motor Vehicles Commission is creating records of New Jersey residents and then transmitting them to the judiciary and the statewide voter registration system, and that some are misidentified as citizens will, of course, only make this mystery deeper. The fact that the state's jury duty selection is being impacted widens the scope of the problem and heightens the need to act quickly and thoroughly to resolve it, said Micah Rasmussen, the director of the Rebovich Institute of New Jersey Politics at Rider University. Pete McAleer said that about 20% of those who respond to the qualification question report that they do not meet one or more of New Jersey's statutory eligibility requirements. Roughly 1/4 of the reported disqualifications, approximately 75,000 individuals per year, are based on lack of U.S. citizenship. So the 75,000, again, is an average over a 3-year period. And they said, we've had safeguards in place since the 1990s. So don't worry, you can trust us. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them. And since they're all the way in New Jersey, I can't throw them very far at all. So let me say thank you to Trump1 over on Pilled. Much love, Zach. Lurking now. Thank you for that. NX17, much love always, RP. Thank you for that, my friend. Filter Dog says, was it you that was talking about X money? Is it legit? It was me that was talking about X money. It is totally legit. It's a bank account that is basically run by X. You are insured by FDIC insured up to $10 million. You have no fees. You get 6% interest on your money, and then you get 3% cash back on all your purchases through your X Money card, which they are going to send you when you request it. So yes, it is totally legit. I am moving my personal and my business accounts over to X Money. I'm canceling my traditional bank accounts because, you know, those bank accounts basically cost me money every single month to have. I get 0 in interest. And just by keeping money in that account, I will get a 6% APR. So it's a no-brainer. Yeah, X Money is going to put all of those other banks out of business. Stern and kind. Thank you for the cookie. I appreciate it. Okay. Yes, and I think that they're going to set it up so that like you can like donate through that X Money account, but I just don't. Where do you go? If you have X, then they will tell you when you're eligible for it. So if you don't see it pop up or you haven't gotten a notification, it's not there yet. Just give it some time. It's been out for a couple of months, and I've been kind of itching, waiting to get access to it. Okay. All right. So although things may be looking worse for the state of New Jersey, and they are definitely in the process of cleaning things up, maybe not at the rate that we want them to. But again, if they continue to hold elections with illegal aliens on the voter rolls and they end up casting ballots, all of those people are in criminal jeopardy. I want to see people go to prison. I will be happy to see it that way. We already saw Alaska blink. About 3,300 people were invalidated and asked to prove their identities. No guarantee that any of them will. And now let's go to Pennsylvania, because Pennsylvania just had their own voter registration purge. And as a result, Republicans gained around 7,000 net voters over Democrats as a result of this. So Pennsylvania Democrats lost 64,000 voters from their voter rolls. For whatever reason, those voters on the voter rolls were found to be illegitimate. And so the state of Pennsylvania, in efforts to keep up with President Trump, the DOJ and DHS's demands, have removed those 64,000 voters. Now, the Democrats still outnumber Republicans in the state of Pennsylvania by about 56,000. But, you know, how many more of those people that are still in the voter rolls are real people? We don't actually know. But this is all the more reason to say we still need to have a proof of ID when people go in and cast a ballot. So again, 64,000 ineligible Democrats were just removed from the systems. As far as I know, there wasn't a single ineligible Republican vote. Isn't that interesting? Certainly find it compelling myself. All right. Now, Before we continue with that, let me just once again say thank you very much for hanging out with us today. Please hit that like button and let me give a big shout out to the next sponsor of the show. That is going to be the Kids Guide. All right, you guys, I know a lot of other people out there are pet owners. You're like me. You might have a dog at home, and you know that they're a lot more than just a pet. They are part of your family. They are truly your best friend. And it turns out that America's founding fathers also felt the exact same way. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and quite a few others of the men who helped build this country all had loyal dogs by their side. Some of them even traveled with them during the Revolutionary War, and they were there for some of the most incredible moments in American history. Now, when I found that out, I thought that's a pretty cool way to get kids interested in history. And as it turns out, there is a company called the Kids Guide that's already doing just that. They have a guide called the Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends. Bit of alliteration there. And it shares the true stories of the remarkable dogs that belong to America's founders. It's beautifully illustrated. It's easy for kids to enjoy, and it teaches them about the people who shaped our country through the stories of the companions that they loved the most. So let's be honest, getting kids excited about history isn't always easy, but you tell them they're about to learn about George Washington's dog, and that might get their attention. So I thought it was a genuinely clever idea. And if you've got kids or grandkids who love dogs, I think that they're going to have a lot of fun with this. So they're running a very special offer right now. That includes the Kids Guide to the Founders' Furry Friends, along with some other freebies. And if that sounds like something that you might be interested in or your family would enjoy, just head over to freeusadoggift.com. Once again, that is freeusadoggift.com. Thank you very much to the Free Kids Guide. All right, now, sticking with election security, it would appear that yet another far-left judicial activist who is stepping outside of the powers that have been separated for a reason, he has just blocked President Trump's historic election integrity executive order in 23 blue states. So this is about the mail-in ballots. Now, this is, of course, a Biden-appointed majority in the First Circuit Court of Appeals, and President Trump was handed this setback on Saturday. They are refusing to lift an injunction blocking a key election integrity provision from his executive order. Now, it's not in all 50 states. It's only in the 23 blue states and the District of Columbia that actually sued to stop this from moving forward. But this is a 3-judge panel, and they denied emergency stay requests filed by the administration and 12 Republican-led states, which leaves a lower court's order in place, which is preventing the Department of Homeland Security from distributing federal citizenship lists and blocks to the U.S. Postal Service from applying new mail-in ballot requirements in the plaintiff states for elections held on or before November 3rd, 2026. So Judges Gustavo Gelpi, Julie Rickleman, both of them appointed by the Joe Biden through the First Circuit, they are the majority, and the Trump-appointed Judge Josh Dunlap concurred in part and dissented in part. He argued that the states lacked standing to block the DHS from merely providing citizenship information. So the ruling is obviously not final, just like everything else that happens in the courts in this godforsaken country right now. The administration is going to appeal. Now, instead, the 20-page court order denies the administration's request to suspend the in-place injunction while the appeal proceeds. So the administration may now seek emergency relief from the U.S. Supreme Court. And that is exactly what they have done. They have now requested that emergency relief. Hopefully, this means that President Trump is going to be able to get this overturned. You know, here's the other thing, and I suggested it this morning with CanCon. The Postal Service is a part of the executive branch. Yes, it is a quasi-private agency. They are also, however, made up of employees which are federal. So they get federal benefits. They get federal time off. They have federal unions. They are, for all intents and purposes, a federal agency, even if they have, their own governing body, which they do, but the Board of Governors that oversees the Postal Service is overseen by governors that are appointed by the president. So the Postal Service has already said that based upon President Trump's executive order, they are not going to deliver mail-in ballots for states that have not essentially confirmed that the people that are receiving mail-in ballots and actually voting are actually citizens. Now, although the stay basically blocks the delivery of the citizenship information, it doesn't say anything about the Postal Service refusing to deliver those ballots. All it says is that you can't do this and you can't do that. But it doesn't say anything like the Postal Service must deliver ballots. So they could still continue to refuse to do that. And that would probably be the best thing that they could do if we want to get election security in place before the November midterms. So right now, SCOTUS is on recess, right? I mean, this is like the off time for them. So I don't exactly know how this appeal is going to play out. Are they going to come back for an emergency? Are they going to look at it from home? Are they just going to, grant the Trump's administration's request for this emergency appeal and the stay of the original injunction? I don't know. We'll have to see how this goes. But until the Supreme Court takes a look at this emergency appeal, there is really nothing more that we will know. Now, perhaps we're going to get some messaging directly from the Postal Service. I think that, it would be best for them to just say, nothing has changed. We're not going to deliver mail, especially we're not going to commit federal crimes, because that's exactly what it would be. If these states don't guarantee and clean up the voter rolls, making sure that these people are actually citizens and they're not illegals and they actually have a right to vote and they're real live living people. If they don't do that, then there is a high possibility that the Postal Service would be implicated in the commission of a serious federal crime. And nobody wants that. Ain't nobody got time for that. They don't want to get, hit with a federal indictment. So they could go ahead and go that way. I see nothing stopping them. Thank you to Surter, who says, everyone keeps looking at Dems and Rep numbers when independents are the ones who historically swing the elections one way or the other. Is that true for all elections? I don't know. But I mean, obviously independents are just as important, but obviously the people in power are Democrats and Republicans. It is independents who are voting for Democrats and Republicans. So you're looking at this tug of war between Democrats and Republicans in Washington. And, we've even got a tug of war amongst rhinos and patriots of one form or another. All right. Now, this is maybe something you guys might have heard about. This broke over the weekend, apparently just before Joe Biden was set to leave the White House. He and some of his staffers got together, or perhaps it is more appropriate to say that his staffers got together and then handed him the paperwork. They were attempting to worsen the immigration crisis and the illegal alien crisis that we have here in the United States much more before President Trump had a chance to take office. So Eric Schmidt over the weekend put out this memo that he had received from the archivist of the United States. This is part of a request that he had made as chairman of the subcommittee on the Constitution. So he said, I obtained this memo from the archivist of the United States as part of a special access request I made as chairman of the subcommittee on the Constitution. What did that memo say? Well, they issued it in early January of 2025, just as Joe Biden was essentially preparing to leave office. And it appears that the Biden government was looking to expand TPS, temporary protected status, to an additional 3 million aliens that were here in the United States. They were looking at adding 1.5 million Guatemalans, 600,000 Ecuadorians, 464,000 Nicaraguans, and another 455,000 Venezuelans. Now, the memo also included populations for nations like Ukraine, Sudan, and Afghanistan. Now, the memo also pointed out that previous court challenges had blocked many of President Trump's attempts to terminate the protections and focuses on granting TPS relief for a particular country, and that would be Haiti. Haitians are definitely not people that we want here in this country on a full-term basis. Haiti has been an independent nation for 200 years. They received their independence 50 years after the founding of the United States of America. And look at the state of Haiti. They have never had a functioning government. They have never had a functioning economy. They are essentially ruled by cannibal warlords. Those are not the people that we want to import into the United States. We've seen firsthand the damage that Haitians have done. Look at Springfield, Ohio. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. So the memo argued that granting TPS will potentially protect many vulnerable people from President-elect Trump's planned mass deportations. They already knew exactly what President Trump was planning to do, and they wanted to stymie it before he got in there. They argue that these protections are likely to hold in court, and they are prepared to litigate efforts to terminate or slow down the implementation of TPS for specified reasons by the Trump administration. Prior federal litigation brought by advocates during the first Trump administration was successful in halting its efforts to terminate TPS, though that was due in large part to its failure to produce a factual record in support of termination, which is something that could be rectified. The previous administration unsuccessfully attempted to terminate TPS designations for Sudan, Nicaragua, Haiti, El Salvador, Nepal, and Honduras. Courts issued preliminary injunctions blocking the Trump administration's actions. Your administration, i.e. Joe Biden, took actions to resolve this litigation by either redesignating Haiti or rescinding the terminations. Now, the memo also notified Biden's senior team of demands on TPS from a number of Democrat senators. That included Michael Bennet of Colorado, Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, Cory Booker of New Jersey, Dick Durbin of Illinois, Mazie Hirono of Hawaii, Ben Ray Lujan of New Mexico, Tammy Duckworth of Illinois, and Alex Padilla of California. In addition, some stakeholders are requesting that your administration designate nationals from new countries, most notably Ecuador and Guatemala, for TPS. That probably has something to do with the fact that all of those migrant caravans that were coming across the border during Joe Biden's 4 years in disaster were likely from those locations. My investigation uncovered that the lame duck Biden White House tried to keep millions of illegal aliens in our country by abusing temporary protected status, Schmidt explained. After the American people voted President Trump's promise to end the TPS scam, the Biden regime tried to subvert the will of the American people. Sounds familiar? Keeps happening even to this day. This was a mass amnesty by decree. America is for Americans, and it is our home. It is not a permanent refugee camp. So we need to get rid of those people. Now, speaking of those holdovers, the James O'Keefe expose last week for the Pentagon employee, the guy who got honeypotted by James O'Keefe himself in a badly positioned porn stash and nothing else. He is now fired from the federal government. He is no longer working in the federal government. And that is only possible because of what President Trump did to change the regulations surrounding the continued employment of employees who are doing things that they shouldn't be. So this guy was like top of the heap senior executive service. If President Trump had not gotten that passed, then, of course, this man would still be working there and he would still be waiting out President Trump to leave office, slow rolling until President Trump was gone, and then he could essentially undo everything that President Trump had done. But that guy is now completely gone. So that is wonderful news. All right. Now, we also have wonderful news coming from U.S. Customs and Immigration Services. There has just been announced a major rule change to the asylum system with the intention of unraveling the backlog that we currently have on the books. So what they're doing is changing how the asylum claims move through the immigration system. Now, this will refer to certain applications directly to immigration judges, without first interviewing applicants so that they can try to reduce the number that is currently on that backlog. Now, the interim final rule takes effect immediately, and it gives USCIS the authority to send some asylum applications to immigration court without conducting this affirmative asylum interview and actually meeting them in person, taking the time to get to know them, a little meet cute. But it eliminates what the administration calls an unnecessary step to the adjudication process. So the change is going to apply to affirmative asylum claims. These are claims that are filed by immigrants who are not in removal proceedings. Defensive asylum claims, by contrast, are raised already before an immigration judge after the government has initiated the removal proceedings. So currently under USCIS, they generally interview the affirmative asylum applications before they end up granting asylum or before they end up referring the case to the immigration judge, where there is a separate review that's done. But the Department of Homeland Security says that this process is a little slow. It can result in some applications being reviewed twice, and we don't need to do that. We want to be as efficient as possible. First, they tend to get reviewed by the USCIS, and then they get reviewed again by an immigration judge. That's one of the reasons why we have so many cases that are on the books, on the backlogs. For a long time, we've been saying we need more immigration judges. President Trump has fired some of the bad ones. He has hired a whole lot more of good ones. But if we don't need to worry about these first and secondary interview processes, then we can just get them the hell out of the country as quickly as possible. Because under this new rule, USCIS can refer these asylum applications directly to immigration court, not the review notwithstanding. They don't have to do that in person. And it's a change that administration officials say is going to allow both asylum officers and the immigration judges to process this case more efficiently while directing resources towards applicants who have legitimate claims of persecution. Unfortunately, the asylum system is heavily, heavily abused, and just about everybody who comes here and claims asylum, in fact, I think probably every single person who comes here and claims asylum, including people who are not legitimately under threat of bodily harm back at their home country, they come here and they say, I'm so worried about my safety back in my home country. You got to save me, America. And then they end up going into this system and they wait. So they need to tighten up the asylum system. This way, they'll be able to speed up the immigration enforcement. And officials say that the current process is just way too exploited. We need to stop delaying these removal proceedings and figure out how to get these people out of the country as quickly as possible. So the director of USCIS, Joseph Edlow, said, "For far too long, the asylum system has been exploited for the purposes of delay and work authorization, not legitimate claims of protection. America's asylum system exists to protect individuals who genuinely fear persecution, and this rule will help ensure that these resources are directed to the timely adjudication of those claims instead to those seeking to use the system as a loophole." James Percival, general counsel, is saying that the delays within the system have hindered immigration enforcement. One of the greatest barriers to effective immigration enforcement is intentional delay by illegal aliens and the open borders attorneys who represent them. Now, my office works every day with the immigration components of DHS to improve efficiency and fulfill the president's mandate. This rule would do just that. Again, the rule takes effect immediately, and USCIS say that they will continue accepting public comments before they issue the final rule. But that means that in the meantime, we're going to start treating it as if it is going to be final. And that is a wonderful thing. All right. Now, also, Mark Rosenbaum, the director of statistics at DHS, has just been fired. This is interesting because there's been a lot of chatter recently that DHS has been slow walking or withholding deportation numbers. I've seen a lot of influencers saying that online, people who were previously in daily contact with DHS, and they were getting these numbers so that they could publish them online. And then people started saying that they were no longer getting the cooperation. Now, representatives of the DHS came forward and said, that's not true. We're giving the information out all the time. Well, it turns out that Rosenbaum, a liberal, was actually most likely directly underreporting deportation numbers and also withholding that information when people were looking for it. So now we get rid of Rosenbaum and the process can continue afresh. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Anyways, good riddance to bad rubbish. See you later, Mr. Rosenbaum. All right. Now we have another judicial decision here. Again, the First Circuit Court of Appeals, the same First Circuit Court of Appeals that we just spoke about a moment ago that made the ruling against President Trump with regard to the mail-in ballots. This 3-judge panel on Friday denied the Trump administration's emergency request to keep President Trump's H-1B visa payment requirement, that $100,000 payment requirement, keeping that in effect while the government appeals a lower court ruling that tossed it out. Again, stepping outside of the powers of the judicial branch. So this leaves in place U.S. District Judge Leo T. Sorokin's June 8th decision where he vacated the entire policy. Wouldn't you guess, Sorokin is an appointee of the Obama administration. He ruled that the fee exceeded executive authority under the Administrative Procedure Act and was unconstitutionally ultra vires. That's Latin for I don't know what. President Trump issued the proclamation 10973 on September 19th of last year so that we could stop the rampant abuse in the H-1B system. That proclamation found employers were using the system to replace American workers with lower paid foreign labor, and they are still doing that today, mind you. Probably trying to kick it up a notch now that they won't have to worry about that $100,000 fee. But all of that behavior drives down wages. It undermines the American economy. It obviously puts Americans out of work. I've seen a lot of chatter online, people with computer science degrees who are very, very nervous about the directions that their industry is going, not only from cheap Indian labor being imported through the H-1B or any of the other numerous visas, but also through the threat of artificial intelligence. It seems like, there's a lot of things that artificial intelligence can do a lot faster and perhaps a little bit better than humans. And, coding, computer stuff. I mean, that's obviously one of them. So President Trump's proclamation required the $100,000 payment to accompany any new H-1B petitions for workers who are coming in from outside the United States. There were, of course, a few exceptions for national security interests, but DHS and State Department officials implemented that policy through fee schedules, FAQs, and related actions. Of course, they got sued by 20 Democrat-led states, which included California, Massachusetts, Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Wisconsin. They claimed the fee would hurt their ability to staff public colleges, universities, schools, and healthcare systems. Hire Americans, and you won't have to shell out $100,000 when you do it. So Judge Sorokin once again agreed with the blue state plaintiffs. He vacated the policy in full. The administration asked both the district court and then the First Circuit Court to order the pending appeal stayed so that they could then continue to challenge this policy, but allow it to remain in effect. So the district court refused a full stay, but they granted a temporary administrative pause while the emergency motion was pending. And then on July 24th, the First Circuit wholly rejected the government's request entirely. So the panel, again, Judge David Barron, Judge Gustavo Gelpi, and Judge Julie Rickleman, Obama, Biden, all of them claimed the administration failed to make a strong showing and it was likely to succeed on merits, but they focused almost entirely on the claim that this $100,000 payment was an unauthorized tax-like burden requiring a clear congressional delegation. Isn't that funny? Remember when they hit us with the Obamacare healthcare tax, but then because it wasn't a tax, it was okay, even though it was a tax, because it was money that we had to pay if we refused to get healthcare through the Obamacare system. But then it turned out it was actually a tax and they weren't supposed to be doing it the whole time. This is not a tax. This is not a tax. This is a fee. This is a fee, an application fee. But anyways, of course, they're not going to see it that way. So they said that it was overburdensome. It was basically a tax, and they basically pushed aside the president's broad statutory authority to restrict the entry of illegal aliens and said it was detrimental to U.S. interests for the president to restrict the entry of aliens. So companies have taken thousands of H-1B approvals while laying off American workers. And the $100,000 fee was supposed to be a stopgap towards that, to basically stop these companies from firing Americans. If they were going to have to shell out $100,000 for every single H-1B applicant that came through, maybe they would think better of it. Clearly, the H-1B and all of the employment visas need to be reworked in a fairly dramatic fashion. We talked about that last week, some plans that are going on. But, of course, that has yet to make its way through the House and the Senate. All right, so let's then take a look at a case where H-1B is relevant. All right, so there was an article that was written about this young woman right here, Tanvi Pisal. The article was entitled, "I was laid off twice in 3 months while working as an immigrant in the U.S. I'm still in survival mode." So she lost the H-1B lottery, and instead of going back to India, she figured out how to skirt the system, and she remained here in the United States. So this story came out in Business Insider, and they positioned her as this like plucky go-getter immigration success story who was fighting against all odds to remain here in the United States because that was her dream, bro. She wanted to come to the United States, escape the ghettos of Calcutta, and get a really good job that could have otherwise gone to an American citizen. So this is a public walkthrough, basically, of how the visa fraud system works. Well, it's not even fraudulent because she's not breaking any laws in doing it, but it goes to show you how easy it is for people to get around the various stops and roadblocks that have been put into this system. So in 2021, she arrives from India and she goes and gets her master's degree at San Jose State. After she graduates, she gets hired by a Bay Area healthcare startup. She's hired on a STEM opt visa, so there's no lottery. There's no cap on those STEM opt visas as well. There's also no prevailing wage requirement, and most of the opt workers are exempt from Social Security and Medicare, so she doesn't have to pay into those things. The employer saves 7.65% in payroll taxes on every check that they shell out to an opt employee. So on paper, she costs the company less than an American citizen would. And she probably has a resume that would be equivalent to many other Americans out there. So if you're purely talking a numbers game, right here, these companies already have an incentive to not hire an American citizen. They say, well, geez, Jim Johnson, I really like your resume. You have all of the requisite experience and, you interviewed extremely well. But we have this girl who just got here from India and she just graduated from college. Her resume is identical to yours. She may not have the work experience, but we're going to save 7.65% right off the bat by not having to pay her Medicare and Social Security taxes. Oh, and by the way, we can also pay her even less than what we would pay you because you're an American. And of course, your standard of living is better than hers is. So after she gets a job there, her employer enters her into the H-1B lottery and she loses. But nothing changes because she's still there on that STEM opt visa. However, the STEM opt visa runs out after 3 years. So then in October of 2025, she gets laid off. And then in November of 2025, a recruiting company in New York City hires her. So she has to relocate across the country. They don't give her any relocation assistance, but then they lay her off 2 weeks after she moves into her new apartment in New York City. The move itself cost her $6,000. This is kind of a dick move, I'll be honest with you, but, them's the breaks, kids. Happens to the best of us. And then in December of 2025, she goes back to California because her opt is expiring and she's got 60 days to leave the country. Now, considering she doesn't have a visa, she doesn't have a job, probably going to go back to India, right? Well, think again, bucko, because in February of 2026, right as her visa deadline is about to expire, She finds a job that will hire her to do contract work. She then enrolls in a PhD program in a business administration program at Westcliff University. This is a for-profit school, one of the best-known day one CPT schools in the country. She says, I only enrolled because it allows me to stay in the country on a student visa. Well, there you go, kiddo. She just has to remain in college. It's like that guy that we just deported who is a professional student and a professional Hamas demonstrator. He was an undergraduate for 15 years. He could have gotten himself 4 bachelor's degrees in that amount of time. Didn't get a 1. Anyways, so that's how the system works, okay? They know which of these visas they can potentially use to remain in the country, and it allows them to essentially hop from one to the next. I had another one, which was even worse than this. And I don't know what happened to it. It's gone. I thought I had it pulled up, but essentially this guy, he was on an H-1B. He was here for like 10 years, just kept re-upping it. Remember, I mean, with your H-1B, you just, keep going and going and going. And he lost his job, couldn't find something else, switched over to an F1, blah, blah, blah. He just kept going from one visa to the next. And then finally he ran out of options and he was going to head back to India. But, he didn't want to do that. Nobody would want to do that. But I'm sorry, you don't get citizenship. You don't get to stay here forever. So anyways, Jeremy, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for stopping by. Can Delicious, thank you for the can. And she says, cheers, everyone. All right. Do me a favor, guys. Please hit the like button. That would be super cool. All right. We've got a couple of other stories to go through. Good news. ICE is reporting that today they began their New York operations. They were apparently in Queens, and they were rounding up illegal aliens and arresting them. Let's go ahead and do a live search for Queens ICE and see if we can't find some good videos. I didn't see anything when I was looking earlier. But here is Tom Homan letting the good people of New York know what they can expect to see.
You are going to see more ICE.
Oh, God, this is not Tom Homan. This is an AI video. Why you do this to me, Paul? All right. ICE has begun surging agents to conduct more street arrests in New York City, starting with Queens. New York Democrats are banning law enforcement agencies from helping ICE, so DHS is retaliating and moving in, just as Tom Homan said that they were planning to do. Here we go. 3 hours ago, ICE just launched a new operation in Queens with arrests already underway. As you all know, New York City is essentially a free-for-all at this time. This is from July 26th. ICE is in Corona. This is somebody posting who was upset about ICE.
Look, this is the house. I've been banging on the door for a while.
Okay.
What kind of car is this? This is a nice freaking interior.
Thank you.
How do these people all have beautiful cars? How is that? Anyways, we also have a report of ICE moving in to Ohio, Springfield, Ohio. What did I tell you earlier? Haitian TPS is done, and they're eating the dogs and they're eating the cats. So ICE is moving in there to get rid of all of those Haitians who are on TPS that has now expired, and they have refused to leave the country.
In promising news, ICE is set to ramp up deportations as soon as this week to find and arrest Haitian illegal aliens who have lost their temporary protective status. The Supreme Court's decision to allow Trump to end the Biden-era protection goes into effect tomorrow. Springfield, Ohio will be specifically targeted by ICE, which infamously houses a high number of TPS Haitians. All right.
Get them, boys. Get them. I can't wait to see the videos coming out of that. Let's do a quick search for Springfield, Ohio ICE. See if anybody is posting videos from those raids. ICE out of Springfield. Losers. 1 hour ago, Mike DeWine is whining on CNN about ICE coming in. Mike, you're a lame duck. You're not going to be in office much longer. Go home.
The city of Springfield has come back strongly over the last few years, an old industrial city that now is really coming back. And
remember, the vast majority of the money that is being invested in cities like Springfield is because of Medicaid fraud, the exact same type of fraud that they found in New York, in California, and Minnesota and Maine.
Moving forward, one of the reasons they've been able to do that is because of the Haitians who have filled these jobs. They not only have filled jobs,
the jobs were there for American citizens prior to the Haitians being imported.
They started open restaurants. They bought homes. And
who wants to eat at a restaurant that is run by a Haitian where they might be serving you dogs and cats or the goose from your local park? Not me. I like to eat food, okay? You may or may not be able to see it, but I love food, okay? And I will eat damn near anything within reason.
Rehabbed houses. They've done a lot of things that, frankly, have contributed to the community. And for them to be lost is going to be a big blow to Springfield, and it's going to be a big blow to the state of Ohio. I think, though, it's not just about Ohio. It's not just about Springfield. If you look at caregivers, if you look at long-term care in this country, about 30.
You mean like the ones that we're finding where people don't actually show up and then people end up dying alone in their homes because they're disabled and they don't have anybody to actually come care for them? Or the ones that are billing hours and hours and hours and they've never actually shown up? Or, you know, any of the other Medicaid fraud schemes that we found?
Heard of them. People who work in nursing homes are immigrants. If you look at home health care, where they
there's a lot of American nurses who are looking for jobs and who would work at a nursing home. My daughter is a nurse. Okay. She's worked at a number of nursing homes.
Keep people in their own home, which is what we want. You know, about a third of those individuals are immigrants. And so when you start deporting them and getting them out, people are really going to suffer. They're going to really feel it.
Oh, hold on. Okay, I already read that. Okay. Thank you to Love Warns. I'm here late, but I wanted to say happy Monday to all. Thank you very much, Love Warns. Glad to see you here. Appreciate it. Okay. And just checking to make sure. Okay, that's not new. Okay. All right. So, get them out. Get them out. All right. Now, here is a real tearjerker, guys. There was a story that was going around. A GoFundMe was posted. Martin Soto, a father of two. Oh, my God. This man, his wife, has caused this anti-ICE hunger strike at Delaney Hall. That's the facility in New Jersey, but it turns out it's actually totally false. There was no hunger strike at Delaney Hall, and Martin Soto is not such a sympathetic character. It was initially reported that this 31-year-old father of two, Peruvian national Martin Soto, he was arrested by ICE agents back in February. He was buying diapers for his child, and the source of this rumor came from Martin's wife, Gabriela. Gabriela Soto led a hunger strike in May, protesting the alleged horrors inside the Newark facility. She's the one who claimed that detainees were being served meals that were contaminated with worms and mold. Of course, they weren't, but she also said detainees suffered from gas fumes, inadequate sanitation, and poor medical care. She's the one who went to NewJersey.com and said that her ultimate goal was to free her husband and every other detainee. If I have a miscarriage because of this pressure, I will sue them, she said. I am tired of them controlling the situation. He is in that van. I saw him resisting to get in that van. They forced him in there. 2 big-ass guards. He was handcuffed. They were trying to move him. Obviously, that demonstration ended up spreading out into wider protests against ICE and the deportation policies of the administration. She set up that GoFundMe to raise money for her family while her husband was in custody. Let's just take a look and see where that GoFundMe is. $67,782 out of $100,000. Let's see. let's see, the top donation was $1,000. She's gotten multiple $1,000 donations for simply marrying an illegal alien. All right, but it turns out that the true story that is actually behind Martin's arrest is very, very different. The real reason he was detained is because he was actually arrested for a horrific domestic assault on another woman. He was married with 2 children, but he was cheating and beating somebody who wasn't his wife. Martin Soto purposely caused bodily injury to an unnamed female victim using his hands, both open and closed, to strike her in the face. He caused minor scratches and cuts to her face and neck. That's from a copy of the police report that was obtained by the Oversight Project. Soto then allegedly placed his hand over her mouth so she could not scream for help. The public was told that this was a good man grabbed by ICE while buying diapers. Scott Makowski, a visiting fellow for deportation studies at the Oversight Project, said, the record states he was actually arrested by Kearney police, handed to Hudson County, taken into ICE custody, and detained at Delaney Hall while charged with assaulting the very woman who then made him a headline. This is the pattern. A sympathetic claim is built so it goes viral. The facts are very different when you actually read them. Delaney Hall was actually inspected. It was cleared. Their officers were branded jailers of the innocent on stories that collapsed the moment you check the record. This is one example, but there are far more. Now, also the claims of moldy food, maggot-infested food, none of that was true either. A lot of these guys are eating better than many American citizens. And they are also, like, they're fed, they're clothed, they're bathed until such time that they are deported back to their home countries. All right. Now, in another tragic story about an illegal alien, back in May, a woman by the name of Deborah Murphy, she was an 82-year-old grandmother walking back to her car outside of a Publix down here in Panama City Beach, Florida. She faced the consequences of illegal immigration, and she lost her life because of it. As she walked on a crosswalk, an SUV allegedly driven by a 26-year-old Venezuelan illegal named Carlos Suarez Contreras ran her down. His front passenger seat passenger, Louis Santabarria, who is 29, is also in the country illegally. According to an arrest affidavit submitted by the Florida Highway Patrol, after falling to the ground, the vehicle continued backing up, which made him run over Miss Murphy again. Both men told the deputies they were born in Venezuela. They were issued immigration detainers and booked in the Bay County Sheriff's Office. And Suarez Contreras submitted a written plea of not guilty to the charge of driving with a canceled license and causing a death, which is a third-degree felony. His Georgia license had been canceled, and before conducting an immigration investigation, the deputy on the scene noted that Suarez Contreras gave suspicious answers to his questions. Santabarria immediately left the scene on foot before law enforcement arrived. He only returned when I had Suarez Contreras call him, the deputy stated. Now, let's see if we have a picture of this 82-year-old grandmother, because we got this fat tub of lard right here. Nope, it doesn't look like we have a picture of the woman who lost her life. I always like to see what might have been these poor people. Vibrant Florida grandmother killed by an illegal alien. Perhaps they're not releasing pictures of her, but I feel like that's a real shame. I feel like we need to see the cost. Yeah, lots of women named Deborah Murphy. So, here she is. Deborah Murphy, Panama City Beach, Florida. Poor woman. She should be alive today. She was born to Virginia Berry in Boston, Massachusetts, and raised by her mother. Let's see. It doesn't say how she passed away, but I wouldn't expect them to. That's traumatic. Yeah. Terrible, terrible stuff. All right. Now, here is a particularly eye-opening bit of information. We've already spoken about Xavier Becerra's role in becoming, in the Biden administration's role Xavier Becerra's role in the Biden administration becoming the largest child trafficking organization in the history of mankind. Well, a whistleblower has just come forward and completely exposed Xavier Becerra because undoubtedly he was not just a passive viewer or participant even to the events that took place. He intentionally sped up the process to get as many immigrant children into the country as possible so that they could then be handed off to pedophiles. This is a 4-minute segment, and we are going to watch the whole thing. There is a number of other pieces that are going to be coming out on this in the near future. Denise Ann says, hello, everyone. Maybe I should start a Give, Send, Go to help me pay for the $2,000 car repair bill that will turn into $4,500 if I can't pay it off by August 24th. Crazy how much these people make. How is that happening? How is it a $2,000 bill and then it more than doubles if you can't pay it by then? That's crazy.
When you're trying to help and you realize that you've been fooled.
This woman was a case manager in the Unaccompanied Alien Children program under the Biden administration.
And you've been used to traffic children. It's heartbreaking.
Secretary Becerra pressured the Office of Refugee Resettlement to speed up sponsor transfers for unaccompanied alien children, going so far as to say, if Henry Ford
had seen this in his plan, he would have never become famous and rich. This is not the way you do an assembly line.
What was the Unaccompanied Children program for those who are not familiar?
Migrant children that were crossing the borders that came unaccompanied with no parents were being sent to 3 different places here in California. When the minors came into the facilities, we would find out where they were going. They were detained there until whoever were claiming these kids were vetted. However, the vetting was not proper. So we were sending children to multiple addresses. We were sending children to the same addresses on multiple locations. I mean, it was a complete joke.
So a child crosses the border without any parents or guardians. They're just alone. They're brought to a facility like the one you were at. The child needs to be placed with a sponsor who could be a parent or guardian, or it could be somebody totally unrelated. But somehow or another, you need to do a vetting process to figure out, is this sponsor actually the person that they claim to be? Could you explain what that vetting process was like?
They were coming with marks of Sharpie on their arms saying, I'm going to this address, or I am this age and I am going here. Please call. And then they would have a number. At times they knew, but then they didn't know. For instance, I'm going to see my Aunt Mary, but I've never seen my Aunt Mary. I've only met her through the phone, that type of thing. Then we would call the sponsor and say something like, hi, my name is so-and-so. Are you expecting a minor? And then we would give the name, and then they would say yes. Sometimes they didn't even know the name of the child. We would ask for their address. A lot of these people did not have proof. We still have no proof that the child went to that address because we couldn't do any follow-up or continue with the case or see welfare checks. We were not allowed to do that either.
Was there any sort of checking of identification of these sponsors?
The checking of the IDs were none. We would get IDs that you can tell they had been falsified. These pictures were like selfie pictures. So we knew they were fake IDs. However, we had to take them. So I saw a lot of the fake IDs, the fake documentations, the fake birth certificates. I saw it all. I was telling them, hey, this ID looks fake. What I was told was, well, you're not a professional investigator. Your job is to reunify the child to the sponsor, not to investigate the sponsor of the minor. Taking documentation with people sending selfies is not vetting properly. Not being able to talk or see the sponsor is not proper vetting. Using a WhatsApp to talk to these sponsors is not vetting properly. We were constantly getting information that was false, and we were supposed to go with it.
I suppose it goes without saying, but it was the case that children were sent to sponsors who provided a fraudulent form of identification?
Yes. Yes. A lot of these things would have been avoided, but the fact that they weren't, it's heartbreaking to see that a child doesn't get to have his limb because he's lost it. It's heartbreaking to hear that a child is being forced to sleep with different men because the so-called aunt who was her sponsor is making her sleep with men. None of that would have happened if we would have protected these children. But we failed.
Oh, God. Awful. So looks like Muckraker is doing the investigation, and they do great work. So I anticipate that there is going to be a lot more coming out. Now, of course, we've heard these things before.
When you're trying to...
But hearing somebody who is present in the system come forward and, of course, continue to talk about it is so vitally important. We still have 140,000 missing kids, okay? Hundreds of thousands of them have been found by the administration, but far too many are still missing. And we have no idea if these kids are alive. We have no idea where these kids are. And Xavier Becerra, as far as I'm concerned, is a criminal. And if he becomes the governor of California, oh my goodness, it's going to be too bad. Okay, Denise Ann says, I work my rear end off and was struggling before my car broke down. Now I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. I had to finance it through Acoma. It was the only way I could afford to get it fixed. There was they have a 3-month no interest payoff period. Unfortunately, I'm going to be about $900 short. Oh, hon, I'm sorry. Don't donate anymore. Save your money. Use your money however you need to, because I don't want you to be in a position where you're going to get completely screwed over in some type of short-term lending thing. Maybe you can sign up for a temporary interest-free credit card that you can use to pay that off in the meantime, and then, pay that off as you work through, maybe like a 6-month thing or something like that. Your credit union, if you have a credit union account, you may be able to get something through them, a short-term loan. So that's the best advice that I would have. If obviously borrowing it from somebody is not an option, I go to your bank and see if there is some type of short-term thing that you can get. See if you can get a credit card with an introductory period, maybe with doing a balance transfer or something like that. So then you don't have to worry about it right away. And hopefully that would be able to help out. I'm so sorry, but thank you very much. Everybody pray for Denise, because obviously we want to make sure she doesn't get too screwed over. We want to see you do good, hun. All right. So, outside of Delaney Hall that we were just talking about, there was an ICE employee who apparently angered the people who were outside protesting. Take a look at this. Oh, I want to play. Oh, I have to allow it to open up. Okay, so they're communicating with the detainees inside there with...
Hi, everyone. My name...
Where? This is not the video. No. Hold on.
You think that offends us? What offends us is that you're literally trafficking human beings right now. You're trying to get us mad. You're the one.
Oh, just having some fun, getting ready for my deportations. All right, now, recently, President Trump's speech regarding the infiltration of the Chi-Coms into the United States election system came with the revelation that mainstream media journalists had been bought and paid for by the Chinese Communist Party to write negative and defamatory stories about President Trump. Well, Natalie Winters has tracked down which of those mainstream media journalists are actually on the payroll of China. Now, I would hazard a guess and say that none of them have found or have filed any FARA forms. But she says, I have exclusively uncovered the identities of prominent U.S. journalists flown to China by a CCP-linked influence operation seeking favorable coverage and positive messages about Beijing. I don't know if this list is exhaustive, but she says the names include some that you may have heard of. Ezra Klein from the New York Times, Matthew Iglesias, the co-founder of Vox, Ronald Brownstein, CNN senior political analyst. Bradford Plummer, New York Times reporter. Marjorie Miller, former Associated Press vice president. Steve Clemens, former editor for The Hill, and David Rode, MS Now senior national security reporter. Jonathan Alter, NBC News and MSNBC political analyst. David Sweeney, former NPR managing editor. Daniel Gross, former Yahoo finance columnist. Marilyn Giwax, former NPR senior editor. Kathleen Devaney, former Newsweek editor. Tom Olmsted, former U.S. News and World Report correspondent. Steve Chapman, former Chicago Tribune columnist. Bruce Stokes, former National Journal correspondent. Craig Gilbert, former Milwaukee Journal Sentinel Washington bureau chief. Tony Semerad, Salt Lake Tribune reporter. Shika Dalmia, former Week columnist. Jonathan Broder, former Newsweek senior writer. Christy Kempf, former Chicago Tribune associate managing editor. John Healy, Los Angeles Times deputy editorial page editor. Julian Paquette, former foreign affairs reporter. And she says the TRIPS organizer, CUSF, was funded by Tung Chi Hua, a former senior official in the CCP's United Front system, the influence apparatus Beijing uses to cultivate foreign elites and shape institutions outside of China. A bipartisan congressional report says the United Front works to co-opt and neutralize sources of potential opposition to the CCP. American media was not incidental to the strategy, it was a target. The access went far beyond conference rooms. American journalists were taken on curated tours through China, including visits to Chinese military bases by the same network seeking favorable coverage. And there are actually pictures of these people in China. Looks like China produced some sort of a booklet or a one-sheet bragging about the fact that they got these American media personalities over there so that they could be influenced. Then came the coverage. Shika Dalmia published, China bashing is for losers. Bradford Plummer praised Beijing's climate agenda. Bruce Stokes warned that economic decoupling from China would backfire. Catherine Rampel repeatedly attacked Trump's China policies. One dispatch from her CUSF-funded trip amplified Chinese officials portraying America as the aggressor and urged Washington to abandon its zero-sum game attitude towards Beijing. David Rode produced one of the clearest examples after a CUSF-organized trip. The Chinese state has played a central role in creating, supporting, and expanding businesses here. Rode concluded, those successes show that for all the attacks from American politicians on Chinese currency manipulation, American companies can find profits in China. Then came the verdict on American industry. Americans, meanwhile, should accept that large-scale manufacturing will never return to the United States. Guess what? He was wrong. Rode urged American companies to profit from China's rise and dismissed political objections in Washington as ideological babble. Matthew Iglesias joked about wanting to give party flunkies notes on improving their propaganda. Ezra Klein later credited China with buying America time during COVID. Steve Chapman attacked Trump's trade policies and published a now-deleted column making the case for buying U.S. Olympic outfits from China. Ronald Brownstein opposed Trump's confrontation with Beijing. Former NPR editor Marilyn Giwax later became a visiting professor at Tsinghua University, Xi Jinping's alma mater and one of China's most politically connected institutions. The network also reached Joe Biden's orbit. Bruce Stokes is married to Wendy Sherman, who became Biden's deputy secretary of state and one of the administration's most powerful foreign policy officials. The public saw the articles. It did not see the CCP-linked influence operations behind them. Well, you can follow her and subscribe for more at nataliegwinters.substack.com. I would be surprised if they were the only ones. All right. Finally, Bill Pulte, the acting DNI, last night he announced that he had fired yet more deep state officials. This will be now the fourth round of firing inside Bill Pulte's intelligence agency. He said, since becoming acting director of national intelligence, our team has been smartly and carefully reducing the size of ODNI, refocusing ODNI on national security, the law, and the statute. As of this evening, we just finished a fourth round of thoughtful, measured layoffs. Thank you. Now, last month, Pulte fired over 50 deep state intel officials. The deep state firings has begun, he told CNN last month, and CBS News also previously reported that Pulte fired 6 political intelligence staffers and sent another 45 back to their home agencies. Those ones, when you come to work at the ODNI and you're part of another intelligence agency, you basically come on loan. You retain your employment at that original agency, and then you're just working within the DNI, and that's to help sort of coordinate all of the different intelligence and information that's coming from those other intelligence agencies. But obviously, if we're looking to reduce and limit the size, then you get rid of some of those people, you fire some, and then you just send the other ones back. CNN reported that Pulte had fired 6 appointees that were chosen actually by Gabbard. Today, I spent time with the National Counterterrorism Center team, who is doing an incredible job protecting our country under President Trump's leadership. The room was filled with true professionals and American patriots. It's a privilege to work beside them. And of course, Bill Pulte has also been on a declassification spree. All day, he was posting selected pages from much of the documents that were just declassified by an order by President Trump, actually released by Bill Pulte, related to President Trump's speech on election security. Now, here in this piece that he posted, the White House Task Force on Government Transparency, July 13th. In May, President Trump created the Government Transparency Task Force within the White House Executive Office of the President for the purpose of advising him through the counsel to the President on documents that should be declassified and or released to the public to further his administration's priorities of transparency and accountability. Today, the Government Transparency Task Force announces the first disclosure of the U.S. intelligence community records that were declassified last week under the direction of President Trump. And the declassified intelligence reveals that voter registration rolls from at least 18 states, not all identified by name, have been compromised by the People's Republic of China. So pretty much everything that he was posting was related to foreign influence in the U.S. election system. Now, these all would have been documents that you would have seen if you had gone through the many, many, many scores of documents that President Trump released after his speech. But of course, not everybody had the opportunity to do so. But on this list, we have Alaska, Arkansas, Colorado, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Iowa, Kansas, Maryland, Michigan, New York, North Carolina, Ohio, Oklahoma, and Rhode Island. So a couple of them we've already seen have begun the process of clearing out voter rolls. Don't know what's going on with the DHS actually coming in and patching or fixing machines. But there clearly is a major vulnerability there. And unless we get rid of those electronic voting machines, then I don't know that people are really going to feel comfortable going out and casting a ballot, because we have no way of knowing what happens to our votes once they go through this digital process. All right, now good news as well. The D.C. Circuit has dissolved that injunction, which was previously blocking the Biden audio from the Her investigation. So now the DOJ is cleared to release those ghostwriter tapes and the transcripts that were obtained during that probe. Previously, they had gotten to the point where they could dissolve it. Now they've actually done the dissolving. And so now I would imagine in the next couple of days, we're going to get all of that. So we're probably going to have some Joe Biden news coming this week. If you remember, these were all recordings that were made between 2016 and 2017 while Joe Biden's ghostwriter, Mark Zwanitzer, was preparing his memoir, Promise Me, Dad. And the Justice Department now has the recordings. And so all of these are going to be released to the public. This is a good thing. Obviously, transparency is wonderful. Same with all of the things that Pulte has been releasing and all of the election-related stuff. You know, we can't do something about a problem unless we have the evidence to show that it is a problem. And, of course, the people who are in a position to actually make those changes can't do anything about it either unless they have the details. You know, documents being released are not necessarily for you to do other than consume and then use that as fodder when you're making your judgments and when you're also making arguments to explain to people why they need to care about this stuff. Doesn't always mean that you're going to be able to take action on a specific document or not. But if you do, if it's seen by the right people and it ends up leading to something that can be read as massive change in the system, well, then that is, of course, a win-win for everybody. Let me see. Oh, also, Jackie Espada rated the stream earlier. I missed that. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. In other news, does Natalie no longer work with Bannon? I thought that she was still over there on Bannon's channel. All right. Now, also over the weekend, we got a very, very strange release indeed. It turns out that when Anthony Fauci became a minor celebrity after essentially taking over the U.S. government and our health policy, he began keeping his daily thoughts in a sort of diary. That diary detailing his conversations and the sort of fawning adoration that he was experiencing when he would go out in public, or when, people would come up to him and say, "Oh, Dr. Fauci, thank you so much. You are the science, Dr. Fauci. Thank you for keeping America safe. Oy vey." It was disgusting. Truly, this is like the diary of a narcissist. It was a very, very disturbing read. And Anthony Fauci had the gall to not only celebrate his own celebrity, but he also would write about how he was in touch with reporters that were, planning to have him on, and he would give them questions ahead of time. It was like, yes, diary of a madman, truly diary of a madman. So this release from Rand Paul shows that Dr. Anthony Fauci truly had some sort of bizarre obsession with his own fame. And he also, of course, admitted privately in his diary things that were very different from what he was saying publicly. For instance, he admitted in his diary that he knew based on the science, that the death rate for COVID was a hell of a lot less than what he was telling lawmakers and what he was telling the public when he was doing these interviews. So the diaries were all part of this public release from the committee's ongoing oversight investigation. So Rand Paul shared a series of statements on X about the diary. He said, "My investigation uncovered that Anthony Fauci kept a diary. What he wrote privately and what he told the country are two very different stories. Today, I'm releasing his entries from December 2019 through December 2022. While publicly posturing as a champion of science, he was privately directing his staff to destroy federal records. That, my friends, is a blatant violation, a betrayal of public trust, and further proof that Fauci engaged in a cover-up from the very beginning of the pandemic. I'm going to ask him about this when he undergoes oath on Wednesday." Yes, that's right. You heard that correctly. In 2 days from now, on Wednesday, Dr. Anthony Fauci will be going under oath, and Dr. Anthony Fauci will have the opportunity to answer these questions point blank about the cover-up, about his behavior. And what's quite interesting is that now that all of his crimes are coming out, the people who supported him previously are also being asked about him. I'm going to play you an interesting clip here from Scott Gottlieb, who was a Trump administration official and somebody who really supported Anthony Fauci back during the first administration. So in his testimony before the House Oversight Committee on March 11th, 2020, Fauci told lawmakers, "The stated mortality over all of this, when you look at all the data, including China, is about 3%. It's first started off as 2 and 3. Well, it turns out that it was actually more like 0.1 to 0.2. Now, Representative Michael Cloud was asked to compare the mortality from COVID-19 to the mortality of the seasonal flu, and he responded, "I think if you count all the cases of minimally symptomatic or asymptomatic infections, that probably brings the mortality rate down to somewhere around 1%, which means it is 10 times more lethal than the seasonal flu." That is a lie as well. I think that is something that people can get their arms around and understand. However, go to page 19 of his diary, and he wrote, referencing former CDC Director Tom Frieden, "Tom Frieden called me this morning and we discussed various aspects of the outbreak. He and I are on the same page in thinking that this is acting like a bad influenza in its transmissibility, and that the denominator is much greater than 34,867 above, making the case fatality rate, CFR, more like 0.2 to 0.3% rather than 2%. So he increased it by a factor of 10, basically. So Fauci also complained in his diary that Elon Musk was attacking him on X, and it clearly got under his skin. He wrote, "All of a sudden, Elon Musk has started to viciously attack me with tweets on Twitter. Many people in the press and outside are asking about being concerned about the attacks on me by Elon Musk." But, of course, Elon Musk was justified in his attacks on Fauci. You can see here in this tweet that he is referencing. He said, "My pronouns are prosecute Fauci." And following the release of the diary, Elon Musk weighed in again and said, "Fauci smelled it and he also dealt it." Boom. There you go. All right. So take a look at this clip of Dr. Scott Gottlieb. Now, what's abundantly clear from the documents that Rand Paul is releasing from Dr. Anthony Fauci's own words as he talks about the COVID-19 situation, the origins of it, his cover-up, talking about deleting records and, it's fawning about how he's able to get schools shut down and get kids masked up and complaining when people won't allow him to. He's Ron DeSantis won't allow me to shut down schools or make the kids wear masks 24 hours a day. What's wrong with Ron DeSantis? He won't do what I want him to do. Anyways, so this is on CNBC. Joe Kernan is speaking with former FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb. And he calls Dr. Anthony Fauci Scott's buddy.
How about your buddy, your buddy Fauci that I've asked you about in the past? You've defended him quite a bit.
Look, I mean, I don't know what you're referring to in terms of
I've asked him about whether he orchestrated a cover-up of the lab origin.
Whether we know he did. We know you're being far too generous here.
Because of his involvement in making gain-of-function research possible again in China, which he did. He knew that would come back to haunt him, and then basically told his colleagues, go with the natural origin. It was obvious 3 years ago, Scott.
Well, he knew that he was making millions upon millions of dollars off of this situation, off of all the royalties. He also might have thought, this could come back to haunt me. But there's also a really good possibility I could get total immunity from the Biden administration. I'm just going to lobby for that. And even if I don't get immunity, well, I can probably weasel my way out of it, cover myself in Crisco, and just slither out like a snake.
To me, anyway, and everybody else, that he orchestrated that.
Yeah, look, we've talked about this in the show. I think the evidence in terms of whether this was human or naturally derived, I think the side of the ledger that speaks to this potentially coming out of a lab has grown over time. And we haven't had any new evidence suggesting that this came out of a natural origin of spillover.
The latest stuff that came out about him,
it was disappointing.
Didn't he know that it was likely it was from the lab and go to great lengths and tell people to destroy emails?
Well, look, I've looked through the emails, some of them that have been online. I think it's disappointing to see him trying to suppress alternative opinions, and that clearly was evidence from the emails.
It's not just trying to suppress alternative opinions. He was trying to suppress the truth. He absolutely did cover it up. And that's why it was necessary for him to get a full pardon for a 10-year freaking period when he left. Now, Rand Paul's role in all of this as providing oversight on his committee, it's rather limited. The only thing he can do is get Anthony Fauci to come in, question him, and try to get him to perjure himself, because if he does, well, then obviously he can be referred to the DOJ. Anything that he does right now is not covered by this pardon that he received. And that pardon itself, as you know, was signed by the AutoPen. So this is why I am hanging my hat on August 6th for Todd Blanche to be confirmed, because once he is confirmed, then the DOJ to start going after these people. There is nothing that they need to worry about in terms of getting a higher level position filled. We already have. We're going basically 2 years now with all of these very important bureaucratic positions that haven't been filled because the Senate is run by a weasel. So all we need is to have Todd Blanche in there as the Attorney General, and then we can test some of these legal theories that we've been talking about for damn near 2 years now. But yes, Anthony Fauci definitely covered up. Anthony Fauci definitely suppressed. Anthony Fauci definitely destroyed evidence. And Dr. Anthony Fauci will be asked about all of that. He must answer honestly, because if he doesn't answer honestly, then he will have committed perjury, and he will not have any legal protections for that. And I truly do think that the administration is looking for any reason to prosecute Anthony Fauci at this point. Certainly Rand Paul is looking for any reason to prosecute Anthony Fauci. All right, I just have one question here. What the hell is up with this Ming the Merciless beard that this woman has? Do you see this? I mean, like, she's got these two, like, Ming the Merciless, like, beard patches on the side of her chin, and it looks like she dyes them. I mean, like, can you imagine being her husband and saying, hey, honey, have you shaved today? Like, I mean, I realize, like, as women grow older, they might start growing patches of hair someplace, but, like, why? Why are you growing it out, and why are you dyeing it? Why are you drawing attention to it? If you know who these people are, this is the elderly couple who spread feces and drew swastikas on a GOP headquarters. There was also like a poster of Charlie Kirk, and they took human shit and they smeared it on Charlie Kirk's face. This is in Illinois, Arlington Heights, Illinois. They're old people, too. Old people. Brock McNerney, 72-year-old retired financial planner, educated man, and Moisette McNerney, 69-year-old retired special education teacher. Can you imagine being a kid with, like, Down syndrome? They're honest, right? I mean, like, those kids are the sweetest kids you're going to meet. Like, hey, can you just imagine them asking her about her Fu Manchu beard? I mean, like, geez, oh, Pete, she must have really went through it if she was a special ed teacher. So they admitted to criminal damage to property and criminal defacement of property. They did this as part of their plea agreement. This was an event that took place on January 25th this year. Surveillance video footage captured them drawing these swastikas and profanities in permanent marker across the windows at the Republican headquarters. They specifically targeted this portrait of Charlie Kirk so that they could rub poop on his image. They tossed these bags of dog feces at it. They also poured an unknown liquid near the front door, perhaps urine or something like that. And this was right around the time we were seeing a lot of this stuff happening. Lots of vandalism in late 2025, early 2026, bricks getting thrown through windows, that sort of thing. So despite the fact that they drew swastikas, despite the fact that they could have been charged with a hate crime, I am personally not in favor of hate crimes being charged at all. But this is one of those instances where I would have said, a taste of their own medicine would have been appropriate. So anyways, they were only charged with misdemeanors, and they're basically getting off with 100 hours of community service. They've got 18 months of probation and $100 in court fines and costs. It probably costs more than $100 to clean the poop and the pee off of the building. Q Patriot Angel says, just a $1 tonight. Sorry, just wanted to maybe spread some more rainbows to Denise or anyone else with money problems. A scooter, if physically able, doing it in South Florida for 22 years, and it's been a blessing in disguise. Yeah, there are obviously a number of different ways to get around down here in Florida. I don't know the area that you live in, but where we live, it's so spread out. You have to have a car to go anywhere. Luckily, I just don't go anywhere. Which, much to the chagrin of my wife. All right. Now, a lot of people in this area have pointed to the two-tiered system of justice. I mean, you've had a number of other cases recently. Remember the guy who set the cross on fire in Chicago? They said it was a hate crime when they thought it was a white dude, but then when it was a gay Asian dude, they withdrew that pretty quickly. These types of things happen. When they're leftists, it's not a hate crime because, of course, they're hateful, but it's not a hate crime. So, all right. And I think we will go ahead and end it after this story. But you guys, the DNC, I've spoken about this on a number of occasions. The DNC is totally broke. They have negative cash in the bank. And it looks like in order to fund their midterms, they have been forced to put up DNC headquarters as collateral so that they can get a loan from the bank. They got a $15 million loan. And even with that $15 million loan, they still have got negative money in the bank, or they have a negative balance. But they got this line of credit back in October so that they can finance these elections for the midterms. Well, actually, they had to do it. They had to finance the off-year elections and the midterms with this $15 million. The FEC confirms that they got this loan, and they're basically have a revolving line of credit with Amalgamated Bank. Now, the headquarters as collateral means that if they don't pay this money back, they have to give the headquarters to the bank. The bank will repossess it. And I said this morning with CanCon, how funny would it be if like the Trump family somehow assumed this loan and then called it in? You know how they do to like farmers and stuff when they want to get them off their land? Or if like Elon Musk was to acquire this loan and did it with X money and then charged them a bunch of interest or something like that. That would be hilarious. All right, but we are going to end with a feel-good story. A 74-year-old homeowner was luckily able to avoid a home invasion because he was at home. He was just kind of getting over having a stroke, and this dude came up to his house and tried to break in broad daylight. Everything was caught on camera, and the homeowner very quickly used his Second Amendment rights and dispatched this guy. Take a look.
Take a look at this surveillance video from Mr. Donald Boland's home. Boland, who lives with several ailments, heard something or someone outside of his house.
Got up off the couch and come to the front door and looked out. I didn't see nothing.
Police say the man you see banging on the door, going back and forth and prying open a window to gain entry is 57-year-old Cedric Ford. Before the suspect could get inside, Boland saw the man at his window and fired a single shot, hitting Ford in the chest.
That's when I got my gun and shot.
After being shot, Ford hopped back in the car. He and his girlfriend then drove to this gas station where they called 911, hoping first responders would rush out and patch Ford up, which they did, and it was all captured on that camera. You can see police treating Ford while he sits on the curb. In a very animated Stallings talking to police, officers say Stallings claimed she and Ford were victims of a drive-by shooting.
So basically, he gets shot in the chest, immediately runs and jumps into the car with his junky white girlfriend. They drive to the gas station. He says that he was hit in a drive-by shooting. Of course, the police figured out pretty quickly that that's not what happened. Yeah, he lived, wah, 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 wah. All right. Before we go, I have one final message from our friends over on Rumble, and looks like I have a couple more things to read off on Rumble, so I will do that. All right, you guys, you have probably noticed that Rumble is growing and it's not slowing down. You got more creators, more content, and a platform that actually puts users and free speech first. And if you're watching here regularly, there is a way to upgrade your entire experience. Right now, Rumble is running a limited time summer sale on Rumble Premium, and it's the lowest price they've ever offered. With Premium, you get ad-free viewing across the platform. There's no pre-rolls, no interruptions, just the content that you came for. Plus, you unlock exclusive content from top creators like Steven Crowder, Dr. Disrespect, myself, special live events, and more, things that you're not going to see anywhere else. Here is the deal. Normally, Rumble Premium is $99 a year, but during the summer sale, you can lock it in for just $69 per year for life. Not just 1 year. Every single year you stay subscribed, you keep that $69 rate. There's no promo code. There's no extra steps. Just go to rumble.com/premium, and the summer sale price is already applied. Once again, that is rumble.com/premium to lock in the lowest price that Rumble has ever offered. Ad-free, exclusive content, and a price that never goes back up, but only if you grab it before the summer sale ends. Thank you very much. And again, that is less than I pay for Rumble Premium. So if you don't have it and you've been thinking about getting it, it's a great time to do it because you get that special price. Okay, so let me say thank you to Surtur. That couple looks like a Temu Flash Gordon and Ming the Merciless. That could be. And then Snowcat Operator gifted a subscription to Kalia, Texas. Kalia, Texas. There we go. All right, you guys, I will be live tonight at 10:30 on Badlands Media for Baseless Conspiracies. Join me there, or just be back here tomorrow at 5 p.m. for another episode of Red Pill News Live. I will send you off on a raid. Good luck. God bless. I'll see you guys next time. Wait, I just realized that I got there's a couple of pills over here too. The floor is yours. Says, thanks for letting me know, Zach. I live in Jamaica, Queens. I'll keep an eye on the lookout. There's so many Haitians, ridiculous, and they hate black Americans like me. The floor is yours. If you get video of ICE, you get anything like that, hit me up. redpill78 at proton.me. I will show your video footage and we will talk about it, and maybe we'll have a couple of laughs too. Stay safe out there, bud. Yeah, those Haitians are dirty. Brewbark says, when will we see the repeal of the 22nd Amendment? Trump 2028 LFG. That's right. Jokingly, or perhaps not, over the weekend, President Trump at the White House Correspondents' Dinner also suggested he was running for president in 2028. I loved it. That was great. Filter Dog says, notable, Marjorie Miller, former Associated Press vice president. You know, it's extremely notable. All of them are notable. A couple of them are very high profile, like big name mainstream media journalists. And again, I don't think any of them filled out a FARA form. All of them should be prosecuted. And then Juan Morting says, great to catch you on the news. Great to catch you up on the news with you this afternoon. Appreciate you. Juan, I appreciate you, my friend. Thank you very much, guys. That is truly all. Now I'm going to send you on that raid. Peace.